For those who don't know me, I am Mark Muncy. I am the author of the Eerie Florida book series with such diverse titles as Eerie Florida, Freaky Florida, and Creepy Florida. And eventually I'll run out of adjectives, but not for a while. So, and then
Next
recently,
up is Spooky Florida.
I was working on our fourth book, which was going to be something dark skies over Florida. It was a UFO book. So I was really getting heavy into the UFO lore because that's what happens. One of these begets. And as I was working on it, I was interviewing some people who were coming forward with things that happened in the 1950s, and they hadn't really talked about it much. And they were opening up, and one of them mentioned a thing that blew my mind and tied into a case that I had grown up north, up in Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia. And there's an infamous thing up there, a man named Indrid Cold. And he is known as the Smiling Man. He is the first Men in Black, some say. And alien encounter, unusual thing. And now I had this guy talking to me about it. He had seen him in 1952, 6 months after his initial sighting up in West Virginia, and had no idea who the hell he was talking about, had no idea how significant this lore was. And so suddenly I'm like, well, if I write about Indrid Cold ties into everybody's favorite, Mothman. And I'm like, well, if I'm writing about Mothman, I gotta write about the Grafton Monster, I gotta write about the Flatwoods Monster, and I gotta write about all these things. And so suddenly I'm calling my publisher and say, hey, you know that fourth Florida book? It's gonna have 3 chapters in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. And they're like, just take a year and make your West Virginia book. And I'm like, well, it's gonna be the whole Appalachian Trail if you're giving me a year. And they said, okay, so we did. And then 2020 happened. And so the world ended. And so I was like, well, we can't go drive to these places. Every place I write about is a place we've visited, a place we've gone to. We don't do armchair research. I go to the history channel, locations. I interview original witnesses and stuff like that. So I can't just, type away. And it's like, so doing that gave me that extra year to work on it. So the plus side was, I had another year. So it gave me, we got to talk to more people. We got to interview a lot more people, and it became this, giant work that is now going to be a second book in that series too, eventually. But it's been a lot of fun. I also got lots of creepy monsters that have never left their hollers. So, which a holler is like a valley where the families live for 20-year generations, and they they own all the land, and they tell all the stories. So they have the monster story, they have the ghost story, and nobody else knows it. So that's part of the fun. But anywho, that's what I do. So before we get into my little spiel where I'll be telling you monsters galore of Tampa Bay and Florida, come on in, we're just doing pre-show goof-off stuff. So let me get an idea where some of you are from. So where are you guys from? Tampa? Okay. So that'll be easy to tell some stories about. So I know that. So where are you all from? Orlando area. Where? Brevard? Okay, good stuff too. I'm getting an idea where everybody's from. How about you all? So where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Bushnell, Florida.
Bushnell. All right. Yeah, we got plenty of stories out here. Bushnell represent. Bushnell in the house. Yes. How about you, gang? Gainesville. Okay. Yeah, you get all the fun up there with all the serial killers and all that fun. So, and the politicians. Jeez, I don't know what's worse. So, how about you in the back there? Where? Brevard? Okay, so I've got to hit Brevard on this, no problem. How about you guys? Clearwater. All right, we just did, the Jolly Trolleys in Clearwater, they do a ghost tour now, because the Haunted Trolley Tour. And they're using some of my stories from Creepy Florida on the Jolly Trolley about the Bellevue, Biltmore, and a few other places. So if you're in Clearwater and you want to find a little beachy ghost spooky thing, so it's like $20 a person, and it's a blast. So there you go. Where are you from?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Hey, that's the new book. So we got some fun stuff. I will be speaking at the Lizard Man Festival in South Carolina, which is right on Bishopville, was right on that South Carolina, North Carolina border. And I did it like 3 years ago. And you want to talk about a fun paranormal con? It's out in an old airplane hangar, and they have barbecue, they have stargazing because it's a dark sky area, so they have tons of telescopes up, and it's all talking UFOs and monsters. They're all talking about the Lizard Man and Bigfoot and all the other fun. And then the opening act is the Ghost of Elvis. You cannot have a better paranormal con than Elvis opening for you. Come on. So, where are you all from?
Land O'Lakes.
Land O'Lakes. Okay, it's got one of my favorite haunted hotels up there. The Sisters Inn up there, I think it's called. They have there's a guy there, and he's called the Flirty Fisherman. How's that for a fun ghost story, right? He's this handsome dude, and he walks up to you, and he'll start talking. He'll like offer to buy you a drink, and then you turn away, and he disappears. But the thing is with him, you always, ghosts always have that some sort of sense that they were there. Most people, it's like a lot of, usually it's roses from my mother or something like that. He smells like dead fish. So very Florida, right?
Yeah.
Very Florida. You gotta love it. So, where are you guys all from the inn down there? Where you all from? Where?
Wesley Chapel.
Wesley Chapel. All right. Wesley Chapel. You got Croom was what Wesley Chapel used to be. It was basically a ghost town for a while. It was a phosphate mine, which Florida was pretty big for back in the day. And then it became a turpentine mill with all the wood and everything, and then Civil War broke out, and then it just kind of died and disappeared. People don't talk about Croom anymore. And then suddenly it was reborn as Wesley Chapel, and forget Croom. But up near there, you got Brooksville and Hog Island up there. Now Hog Island probably is one of the most known stories of all Florida that nobody knows is from Florida. Because Hog Island had a witch, and she was a global herbalist and lore person, and she was kind of a midwife, just someone who lived in the woods and took care of people, and it's a creepy old witch. So suddenly we had the freezes of 1894 and 1895, and so it was 2 bad years, and so the town's like, oh, it's the witch, just kill her. So they go out and they lynched her. And then when she didn't die quick enough, they lit her on fire. And when she didn't die quick enough, then they shot her. But her ghost is supposedly seen around this area, Hog Island, running around screaming in white and slashing tents and stuff, because it's a pretty big camping community and stuff. So a couple young guys hear that story in the Orlando area, and they love it. So they reach out to a couple research guys and say, hey, look, we want to build up this lore, we want to build up these legends. And one of them is named Dan Mirnick, and he creates a movie from that, and it's The Blair Witch. So they based it in Massachusetts because they couldn't get filming permission in Florida. So the Blair Witch Project is actually based on a Florida legend, the Hog Island Witch, out of Brooksville. So good peeps, good peeps. So did you know that?
I didn't know it was based on.
We literally live right next to Hog Island.
If you read this book, you would have known that. Oh, you did that. You live in that area. Okay.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing in that area, besides the fact Hog Island is so great, you've got all the cemeteries right there, because you got the Florida National Cemetery is right there. If you all haven't been to that, then come on in. We're talking monsters. We're just doing the pre-show stuff here. I don't even have a watch. I'll just go till I stop. But
It's 3:49 anyway.
Until I fall over.
You got 10 minutes.
I got 10 more minutes. Come on in.
Yeah.
Come on in, gang. The water's fine. Come in, all you spooky people. Yes. Love it. Love it, love it. Hello. So we're talking Hog Island Witch right now, just pre-show stuff. Don't even worry, we haven't even gotten into the good stuff yet.
Yeah.
So you've got Florida National Cemetery up there. If you haven't been, it's just a little north of Tampa Bay. Florida National Cemetery is Florida's Arlington. It is where every military can be buried. And it is row after row after row of, you know, those who've died in service to our country. And what's amazing about it is it will actually be bigger than Arlington in the next, probably by the end of this year. Because so many people, you know, they retire down to Florida. I hear, why get shipped all the way back up to Arlington? Let's die in the Florida National Cemetery. And that's only one of Florida's national cemeteries. There's one over in Daytona, and then there's one near Orlando that just started. It's kind of new. And then there's one in Miami that's huge too, but the one in Brickville is actually becoming the biggest in the country, so, which is crazy. But there's another fun cemetery near there called Spring Hill Cemetery. And yeah, Spring Hill Cemetery is super creepy. But I will say, cause you go there and there's this little grave that's for a kid who died. And so people leave him toys and all this, and ghost hunters love this cemetery because you get so many EVPs of the kids laughing and stuff like that. And I was there with a Discovery Channel show, and we were filming for what was going to be Expedition Unknown, and I was a talking head on it. And we're there, and the camera guys, I'm talking about the ghost of the guy who got hung there. I'm talking about the ghost of the Civil War soldier, and then I talk about the kids. And the way you get to this place is you have to park on the main road, and then you have to walk this little half-mile wooded, you know, and beat to hell thing. You can't drive a car back there without dying. And they had a big production RV, so there's no way that's going back there. So they're lugging their equipment. The camera guys are all grumbling because they hated having to do this, and you know, because camera guys do that. I'm a former sound guy, I'm allowed to say that. But they got out there, and we were done, and they were packing things up, and they're stuffing everything away, and we start the long walk back. And as we're doing the long walk back, come on in, you're all good. Good to see you guys again. How are you all? Good. But as they're walking back in, we're walking back to the car, suddenly behind us, Bill Woods, you hear, little kid laughing. And the camera guy's like, did, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like digging for the camera. I'm like, dude, they don't want to play. This was their gift to you. And he's like, and so he's calling the producer going, you'll never believe what happened. He's like, well, did you get on camera? I'm like, no. So that's how it goes. That's how these things go. So I think I can count on one hand how many times weird things like that have happened after the camera stopped. But you know, it's always fun. So how much more time we got? About
8 minutes.
8 minutes? All right.
7-8 minutes.
7-8 minutes. All right. So we'll get started shortly.
I know you can stall.
I'm just having fun. So it's the end of the con. Yo,
Who cares?
Thank you all for coming. They saved the creepy for last. So, you know, they know better. Yeah. Normally they put me on like Friday night at midnight, which is like, really? Yeah. Maybe in my 20s I could have done that, but
Maybe you should.
Those days are long behind me now. So.
Maybe you should give me a script for whenever that happens.
There you go. Next time you can just come up here. Nobody knows what I look like. It's fine. So
Yeah.
It's all good. Although it's funny because I'm big with the tinfoil hat crowd sometimes, you know.
It's
so
great.
which is fun, and it's random. I'll be in some place and I'm like, I know you from somewhere. I've seen you somewhere, and I'm like, well, do you watch this? Do you watch this? Do you watch this? And they're like, I know, you know. And I'm like, okay, well then you probably haven't seen me. And what was great was I was getting my new phone at the AT&T store, and giving the guy there a plug. And he's like, I know you, I swear I know you. And I'm like, well, I do books, I do cons, I do this. And he's like, no, I can't see it. And they had their ad for Univision and all this, and something for the Travel Channel popped up, and it's History Channel, it was Ancient Aliens popped up, and there was my interview, and he's looking, and then he looks at me, and he looks up at the big screen, and then he's like, shoo! And I turn around and go, oh yeah, that's me. And he's just, it was so funny. I was like, yeah, I guess that's where you see him. He's like, that airs every 10 minutes. Of course I know your face. I'm like, all right, cool. Sorry. Yeah.
We love retail TV.
Yeah, I love retail TV. Yes, very much. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you all for coming. Oh my gosh, we got almost a full house. And
Yeah, wow.
I thought Friday, Sunday, guys. Don't you guys have something to do? I mean, all right. We want spooky, right? We want monsters.
Yeah,
So,
built up an appetite.
all right. Yes.
Give me Mothman.
Good stuff. Well, let's go ahead and start rolling there. So
It's already filming.
It's been filming this whole time.
Yes.
You didn't tell me. Thank you so much.
No, because
So,
I thought it was
everybody,
funny
I
to
need
capture
one
it.
favor from everybody. I need everybody to say hi to my publisher, History Press. So if I can get on a 1, 2, 3, thank you. Hello, History Press. Okay, let's do that. So 1, 2, 3.
Hello, History Press.
Thank you for putting me in Cracker Barrel. We love you. So, yes, my books can be found at every Cracker Barrel, CVS, and Walgreens in Florida. And I am so proud.
You can be found at the airport.
Yeah, airports, hotel lobbies. It's fantastic. I love when fans send me where they found the book lately. What was it, Harbor Freight?
Yeah,
I've
that
got
was the wild
Harbor
one.
Freight Market cornered on books, man. So, it's like, cause when I'm there getting my post hole digger, I'll go pick up a copy of Eerie Florida. So that's good stuff. But anyway, I'm Mark Muncy. I am the author of Eerie Florida, Freaky Florida, and Creepy Florida, the best-selling book series from History Press. We do the myths, the monsters, the legends, and the history behind them. Sometimes, which is scarier than the actual legends. And our newest book came out earlier this year, June 20th, and that is Eerie Appalachia. Because, as I said a little earlier in the pre-show, that I found some ties to some Florida mysteries from some Appalachian mysteries. There's some chairs on this end. You want to come down the other side, gang? Come on down. There's plenty of room. Anyway, so what I do is, I am not a paranormal investigator. Oh, can somebody open that door, let some people in? So, otherwise we're gonna have like a haunting here with knockings on the walls and banging, so.
It's thematic.
It's the best movie ever. If anybody hasn't seen the original Haunting, which is based on The Haunting of Hill House, watch that some night, you will go nuts.
Very good.
It's so good, so good. 1963, Robert Wise guy who later directed Sound of Music next year. He makes a creepy ghost movie, and it's awesome. It's probably one of my favorites. And based on the Shirley Jackson novel, which is so great. Had nothing to do with the Netflix series except some of the character names. Anyway, I digress. So I do myths, monsters, legends, ghosts, and we have fun diving into them. Now, the reason I started this was a long time ago, we will say 30 years ago, I decided to run a haunted attraction at my house because I couldn't afford to take my family to horror nights or Howl-O-Scream, which were brand new things then. They were new and baby things, but they were still expensive, and I had 2 kids. So, and I loved scary stuff. So instead of going to them, I made my own haunted attraction, and we did it for charity. And we wound up having 10,000 people a weekend go through my backyard as we steered them. And we based it all on local lore and legends. So rather than have a werewolf jump out at you, I had the skunk ape jump out at you. Instead of having some random vampire, I had this wonderful legend out of Tampa. There was a lady who owned a bordello here, as infamous. Her name was Madame Orr. How is that not the perfect pseudonym for a bordello owner? And her place was called the Orr House. Right? And she was so infamous. I think it's standing remotely, but you can come on in, gang. You can wander around.
Can we have those chairs behind?
Yeah, grab these. Hey, yeah, I took them off the table. I don't need them. So here we go. Share and share alike. Anybody wants these? Grab them. Just sit here. It's fine.
Sit on the floor.
Sit on the floor. Stand on the wall. Come on and keep coming. But anyway, Madame Orr's bordello, right? So this infamous place, Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders come into Tampa. He's trained them. They're gonna go to Cuba for war. And a couple of his men decide to go to Madame Orr's the night before, right? You know, hey, let's have a little fun. And they're never seen again. Because they went to the whorehouse, right? You know, they don't want to go off to war. They've already done they're doing their duty. Anyway, Teddy gets so upset, he orders her bordello burned to the ground. Now, you will find this in no history book, but it's in a few documents of the time. So, you know, we took that for our haunted houses. Oh my gosh, Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Riders burned down a bordello. We made that from dusk till dawn. And it was like, they were vampires, had to be. So that was what we based our haunt on, was stuff like that. And we did that for 20 years. And the city of St. Pete got a new mayor. The old mayor used to come every year and had a grand time. And the new mayor came in and he's like, no, we're denying your permits. You can't do this no more. And so sadly, Hellview Cemetery, which is what we based it on, which is the lost cemeteries of Tampa Bay, one of the many. And so it disappeared. Sadly, no longer with us. But I had all these stories. What am I gonna do with all these stories? Like, I'll write a book. And we had already posted some of the stories on our website, and they had gone kind of viral in the early days of this thing called creepypasta. Yeah, we didn't even know what the hell that was, and we were running our haunted house, and suddenly people were like, ooh, you're doing the dancing smile, you're doing this, you're doing that, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's, you know, it's a local story over Gulfport, and they're like, oh no, that's on creepypasta, that's, and then I realized somebody had copy pasted our stuff from our website and put it onto the creepypasta website. So that's when I'm like, all right, well, we got to get the book out. So we originally did a book called Tales of Terror of Tampa Bay, and we self-published it. And then that's when History Press approached us and said, oh, we love this. Let's do a real scary. Let's do the real stories and the real meat behind them. So that said, let's begin our tales of mystery and imagination, and we're going to talk about some stories. We're going to set the bar, okay, and then we're going to go a little creepier, a little creepier, a little creepier. Now, do we want to focus on I'll take a little poll here. Do we want to focus on Tampa Bay, or do we want the whole state? So, how about Tampa Bay? Okay, so all of Florida? All right, that's a must win. Okay, so don't worry, I'll hit Tampa Bay still. There's still plenty here. So, all right, so we'll set the bar with Tampa Bay. How's that sound? So, okay, we all know the mouth of Tampa Bay, which is the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, right? It goes over that. We all know the tragic incident that occurred in 1980 for those of us in Tampa Bay with the Skyway Bridge disaster, where the Summit Venture, an oil tanker carrying 10,000 tons of oil, was coming into Tampa Bay, and we had one of our wonderful freak storms comes up in the morning. Now, this is the original Skyway Bridge, and it knocked the Venture off course and it plowed into the bridge. That morning there was a fog, so nobody saw, and 23 people went off the edge of that bridge, falling 200 feet into the water. Many of them on a Greyhound bus that was driving over there that morning. There's a famous picture of the last car kind of dangling on the edge. One guy survived because he fell off and landed on the boat. He lucked out, but many did not. Now, they rebuilt. The new bridge goes a different direction, but the old bits of the bridge are the fishing piers that you can still go out on. Now, the scary thing is that old fishing bridge, the old bridge, every once in a while, people see the bus drive across the bridge. And you know, it's a fishing bridge. What the hell's this bus doing on here? And then they'll hear it splash into the water. Now, I had several friends who were line workers putting up the lighting for the new bridge. And they would email me and say, hey, you know, we heard your story. And I'm like, why? I said, because somebody told it, we heard a splash while we're working on this wiring. We're hanging up, you know, we're hanging underneath the bridge, putting all that wonderful new LED lighting on the new bridge. And we hear this splash to the distance south. We thought it was a whale, and it was, we think we heard the bus. I'm like, you may have. So that bus goes over and over and over. So the creepy story, but does everybody, so that's kind of the famous ghost of Tampa Bay, as well as all of our mobsters in Ybor City and all that other fun stuff. Madam War. But do you know we have a monster? We have two
Yeah.
monsters in Tampa Bay. First is one we were able to debunk, sadly. Okay? But it's still a great story, so we're gonna do it. All right, so when you're out fishing on that pier, Tampa has been haunted by this great beast that lives in Tampa Bay. You're gonna learn one thing real quick with all these things. Florida loves to rename their monsters stupid freaking things, okay? We can't have nice things in Florida for our monster name. Just throw that out the window right now before we get started, right? Okay, I mean, as bad as Mothman is, these are worse. Okay, well, here, I'll just swap out since we're doing Florida. There we go. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the monster in this bay swims around the bay, and it is a great white shark. Okay, you think Jaws, right? Only difference with ours, it's a hammerhead, and he's white, and he is about 17 to 20 feet long, depending on the story. He's got scars all over him from the times he's almost been caught, right, or almost been hooked. And one of the scars in his forehead shaped like a swastika. That's how badass this shark is. So can you guess the name Florida would give to this great white shark of Tampa Bay? Is it the Beast of Tampa Bay? Is it the Hammerhead of Tampa Bay? Is it Scarface? Nope, you're close. Old Hitler. Okay? Gotta love that, right? So researching this great thing, we find out that the hammerheads are pretty common here in Tampa Bay. They do follow the Marlin Run, which goes through, and they get 10 to 12 feet long. The records we know is 14 feet, but in the Tampa Historical, the library over there, the Burkett Brothers collection, which is an amazing reference, if any of you have a chance, that's where you have to go and put gloves on and look at these old photos. They were the Olin Mills of their day. But they had a picture of a guy with a 17-foot great white shark that they caught in 1910 out on the old St. Pete Pier. So they are in this area. That was just before they recorded them, so they can't really say it was the biggest ever caught. But there's like two guys standing on top of each other holding it. So, you know, I think we got an idea that it's real. But anyway, what really that story is. Okay, so that's the legend, right? This great white beast. And you can go out there and ask fishermen, hey, you seen old Hitler lately? Oh, he was out by the bait shop, and we saw him swimming around, and it's like he dragged a Jeep into the water off of the pier one time, and it actually, a shark did do that. It got its tow cable hooked, and so what happened was we realized anytime something weird happened with a shark, a big shark, it was that old Hitler. It was that old Hitler. And so then we're like, well, where the hell did the name come from? World War II. Florida is considered to be one of the most important targets of the Germans. They wanted to hit shipping, and they'd already hit up near mouth of the Mississippi River. A lot of people don't realize Nazi subs did get into the Gulf, and we just kind of kept that secret. We didn't talk about that much. We didn't want people panicking. But they were convinced that Tampa Bay, the major shipping harbor, was going to be the next target. So they put up all the spotter balloons. And the spotter balloons are all everywhere, and they're just people up in balloons looking for dark shapes in the water. And they'd see these dark shapes in the water, and they go, "Oh, it's a sub." No, it's just a shark, big shark. So that their code name for that became a Hitler, an old Hitler. And so anything dark in the water was an old Hitler. So that's why that legend grew. So there you go. So that's a debunk, but still cool, right? And we still get some scary sharks. Yeah, question.
So then the part of the legend of it having a swastika scar, was that just
added to because explain the name. Some guy said, oh, the reason he's called, somebody said, why is he called Old Hitler? He has a swastika. Okay, and there we go. So that's how these stories grow and these stories think. So the next Tampa Bay monster is actually one for you creepypasta fans. This is one they call it the Nebraska Avenue Trestle Bridge monster because it's off Nebraska Avenue and a trestle bridge because we can't come up with good names. But what this is there's a train bridge that goes over the Hillsborough River, and it goes over this little street, and it's right next to a high school, which is where so many wonderful legends come from. And this story is that if you go out on this bridge, you'll see this body laying on the bridge, and it's in a suit. And it'll be like, help me, help me. And you'll walk out onto the bridge, which is a train bridge, and about halfway out, it rises up, and it's like an anglerfish or a sea spider, so it's got all these tentacly legs, and it's holding the body out in front, so you either have to jump into the water or get eaten by the monster. Now, a lot of people disappear in this area. There's a lot of suicides off this bridge, not as many as the Skyway. So is it hiding the monster? But what happened was, Slender Man comes out, 2000, right? He's a Photoshop creation for a Photoshop contest, and it's just this dude in a suit. And then he gets on the Creepypasta website, which is like a Wikipedia for monsters. And suddenly there are all these new entries that date from Tampa, and it's all kids from that school who know about the body guy who's in the suit, and he's got the tentacles. So suddenly Slender Man suddenly has tentacles, and so he has spider legs, and that's all from our monster influencing a fake monster. So there's a nice little Tampa boy represented in Slender Man. So you know that. Our last monster for Tampa Bay is over in St. Pete. And this is probably one of those where the real is scarier than the legend. This is Minnie Lightning, the voodoo queen of St. Petersburg, and her gator boys. And her gator boys will come out and steal your children. Okay? Pretty silly, right? And she's a voodoo queen. She hates Marie Laveau in New Orleans. So she steers all the hurricanes over to New Orleans. That's why they come at us and then, oh, that was Minnie Lightning. She's also known as Minnie Lights. So they say, if you know this story in St. Petersburg, they'll say, if you say Minnie Lights 3 times, the lights will chase you, or her green little men will chase you, and all this. So it's all about gator boys, and her gator boys will come out and get you. Now, this one was kind of fun researching because I heard all these different versions of it. And it was one of those, if you were on the north side of town, it was, don't say Minnie Lights 3 times, or the lights will appear, the ghosts will appear. But on the south side, when I would ask about it, it'd be like, don't go fucking with Minnie Lights. Don't be messing with Minnie Lights. It's like, oh, okay, what happened? You know, what, you know? And my wonderful wife illustrates all our stories, and we got the story of the Gator Boys, and so she's drawing the little alligator men and the voodoo queen with her snakes and lightning everywhere. Gotta love that stuff, right? Well, the real story we discovered while we were researching yet another story, and we were in the St. Pete History Museum archives, and suddenly this fan falls out onto the table, one of those little hand fans. And I'm like, what is this? And pull it up, and it was for an alligator farm. It was an ad for an alligator farm in the 1930s, and it was for tourists. And on that fan was the key to Minnie Lights. The fan has little African American children being chased by alligators that were being thrown into the pit at the alligator farm to entertain tourists. So beware of Minnie Lights. It was beware of the men with lights. The gator boys will steal your children. And yeah, right? That's how horrible is that. And that's, like I said, some of these stories, you find out the real history is so much worse than a voodoo queen and her little alligator people. But so that one, when we figured that out, it was mind blowing, and that's what kind of led to this book. So that's where we've set the bar. We're here. Are we ready to go a little worse?
Yeah.
It's hard to top that, right? So, because everybody really does, they like the monsters, but they really want to know, where's the scariest place you've been, right? Where's this dark place? So, let's go down to Port St. Lucie. Hey, there we go.
Born and raised.
Born and raised. You'll know this story, then, I guarantee it. So, we've got, a monster that, did all this stuff. Down here, we've got a real monster. All right, this story involves a man with 3 names. And we've learned one thing when we're researching all the Florida stories. If a man has 3 names in the newspaper in Florida, he's either one of 2 things. He's either A, a politician, or B, serial killer. Thank you. Yes. This guy's B. His name is Gerard John Schaefer. This was one of the worst of the worst. This guy was a sheriff's deputy in Broward County, for you Broward people. And he liked to do what he called twofers, is he would kidnap 2 people at the same time, and then he would take them to his little secret lair, which is in the middle of nowhere, and he had a tree. And he would tie them to the tree. And he would do terrible things to them, and he would make them pick which one dies first. And then he would kill them while the other one watched. And then he would still do terrible things to the dead body. And then he would kill the other one eventually, and et cetera, et cetera. And he kept doing this, and it was all to this tree. And eventually he lost his job as a sheriff's deputy, imagine that, and had to move back in with his mom a little further north. And when he got up there, he was still trying to do this again, but he didn't know the area well, and he couldn't get back to his favorite tree, and he didn't know his stuff. So when he got out there, he got sloppy, and a couple of them escaped when he got called away for a real police case. And they went to the sheriff's office and said, hey, we need help. And guess what? It was his sheriff's office, but thankfully they were able to catch him. Now, he goes to jail, and he's tried. He's only convicted for 2 kidnappings because they can't prove any of this other stuff yet. They didn't know any of this other stuff yet. But an old peddler is down by the old tree where it originally happened, and he's looking for tin cans and stuff because the old house he was based out of was being torn down, and he finds the body parts. They realize this is close enough to what Gerard was doing up at the other case, so let's get him. They do a search warrant of his mom's house, and that's where they found his trophy case, which was a shoebox full of jewelry and other things and teeth. And they were able to use the teeth to tie in to the 2 victims at the previous house, at the old tree location. So now they got him for 2. He goes to jail protesting his innocence. He's been framed. This is, of course, a travesty of justice. And he goes to jail and is put on death row. And he becomes pen pals with a friend of his named Ted Bundy. He decides to write a book called Killer Fiction, in which he fictionally confesses to 86 murders. Yeah. And so they realize, okay, this guy is really confessing to 86 murders. We need to figure it out. Sadly, he is murdered by his cellmate, who stabs him 49 times and takes his eyes out. So it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But,
Eye for an eye.
yeah, exactly. Right? How much do you have to hate your roommate to do that? You know, but this guy, he was a character. But anyway, so you'd think that would be the end of the story. But what happens is the tree, as you know, as Mr. St. Lucie Spider-Man, the tree there people say the tree is what made him do this. The tree is known as the devil's tree, because that's what Florida likes to do. They like to name things. It can't just be the evil tree, it's the devil's tree. The devil itself has brought this tree forth. Now, what's cool about this tree is it's amazing. You go down there, it's this big old live oak, and it used to drip black sap. And so what they said was if you collected the sap and made candles for your Sabbath, your dark energies would be enhanced 1,000-fold. So people with cloaks would come around and grab sap from this tree. The city wasn't too happy about that. So they said, we got to get rid of this damn tree. This is crazy. We got creepy things hanging out in the woods. So let's chop it down. So they hired 2 guys to come chop down the tree. And they start doing their stuff. And the second they get the chainsaw on the tree, it breaks. So they get manly men, they have a second chainsaw, it stops. let's go to Home Depot, get a new chainsaw. So they throw the chainsaws in the back of their truck, they drive away, head-on crash, both men die instantly. The legend of the tree grows. And they're like, and then people start figuring out, oh, the reason they died was they had bits of the tree in the chainsaw. So if you take bits of that tree and put it in the car of somebody you don't like, you can get away with murder. And the reason we learned this legend is the lady decided to do that with her cheating husband. But she got in a car accident taking it back to her house. And, so the legend grows further. So now people are swarming this tree, and the city's like, all right, poison it, kill it. So they try poisoning it, nothing happens. They cemented the hole where the sap was dripping, thinking that would kill it. It's grown around it. So now it has an impervious cement trunk that will never die, and it is grown all around it. So the city finally buys the land and makes a park around it and puts these paths, and they make sure it goes nowhere near the tree, so nobody will ever know where it is. But people in the know. And they actually have two other trees at that park that people call the fake devil's trees, because most people follow the trail. Ooh, it's the devil's tree because it's a big spooky tree. No, the real devil's tree. People in the know where it's at. And it's in Okemuk State Park in Port St. Lucie, and it is a beautiful place. And there's this one box turtle who guards the path to the devil's tree. Every time you go by, we say hi to him every time. He's been there. We've been to that thing 20 years, and he's always there, that same box turtle. And it's just right on Channel 4, and you don't take the main path entrance, take the second turn in. You'll know what we're talking about. You can't miss it when you go there. Ghost hunters love it, all that, although it is closed at dark because it's a national park, state park, they all close at dusk. So all you ghost hunters and wannabe monster hunters, remember, the state parks close at dusk. You have to have special permission, say there later, or a dark and creepy entity will visit you. It's called the police. So Port St. Lucie, so serial killer, all right? So that's next level. All right, moving on. So, are we ready? All right.
Yeah.
So, next step, how many people like Nessie? How many people like your lake monsters? Yes, we love them, I love the lake monsters. Did you know Florida has one? Now, we know sea serpents, right? But we have a lake monster. We have a river monster, okay? St. John's River, pretty big river, goes all the way through northeast Florida. And in the 1800s, this beast was seen. Now, this kind of goes back, if you really follow it back, 1500s, when they were initially scouting this place, the Spanish were sending people off with the natives and wiping them out. But they were also documenting everything they found. They had a French cartographer was with them, and he talked about an island at the mouth of the St. John's River with lizards that breathed fire. Now, he was writing about alligators, he was writing about all these other things that had never been written about in European lore. So that's the one they say, oh, that he was just making that up. It's like, well, everything else he talked about was real, and we know it was real, so why is he making that up? We don't know. We've never found fire-breathing lizards, as far as I know. But we're working on it. We're Florida. We'll find it somewhere. So this beast there was seen walking along the bottom of the St. John's River, and its head was sticking out the top. And so this would have been an estimated 30-foot deep. And when he asked his native guides about it, they told him, oh, that is the beast from the swamp. And we honor it. We don't mess with it. And it eats the birds that eat our crops. So, all right, cool. Well, good thing. And so he noted that in his journals, and it was kind of forgotten about. 1840s, we start having some early boat shipping along there and along the St. John's. And a canoe boat is coming down, and it is delivering some wood to be built for the John of Jacksonville. And it gets overturned by a strange beast with humped backs. So with a gray shell. So we're thinking a manatee is what most modern people think was a manatee came up and took it, but it was, maybe two of them or something. But then they said it had a pink tail that dragged behind it. Maybe manatee, it's a little weird. It's an unusual story. So then we go to the 1880s, and there's a steamboat on the same river. It's in the same area near Jacksonville, and it has come up from Sanford. And on the boat, as it's getting up, again, suddenly goes aground. They're in the middle of the river. What the heck are we, this river's a mile wide. What are we hitting? And it's a shell, a spiky shell. They have obviously never played Mario Kart. They would have known, dodge the spiky shells. Maybe it was blue, but it was gray. And it almost overturns them. They have to abandon ship. The boat is locked. And then whatever was the shell sinks back into the water, and then the boat sinks. So, they were able to salvage it, but it went down a little bit. That is the first sighting of the Beast of St. John's. But we don't call it that. 1977. Nessie mania is everywhere because of the show In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and all this. It's crazy. It's exploding. Everybody's talking about sea serpents and monsters, and a family driving along I-10 and I-95 right at that intersection. They are driving over the St. John's River, and they see a beast rise up. And it has a gray shell on its back, and it has a bright pink head that they said looked like a snail. And it had horns or eye stalks, depending on what they couldn't really see it very well. And it turned towards them. And the big thing was, it crawled up onto land, and it was 8 feet tall on land. As its body dripped into the water, they saw the shell about midway back, so about 20 feet, with a giant turtle, spiky shell. And then the tail was on the other side of the river swimming in. It looked like a giant snake or serpent with a shell. So the press, of course, we've got Nessie. We've got the Beast of St. John's. Nope, Florida, Pinky. Pinky the sea serpent. Sadly, the last sighting of Pinky was in the 1990s when some strange creature washed ashore at the Lake Majority at the end of the St. John's River. And they think it might have been a giant squid or something, an albino, they said. So it was a pink something. So we think that might have been the last time anyone's seen Pinky. So, but he could still be out there, we hope. Fingers crossed. Maybe descendants, because that would have been a long-lived freaking snake with a shell on its back. So that's our sea serpent for Florida. Okay, so now we got to go a little bit darker, right? Because that was kind of cute, but he sank a boat, so he's not the nicest guy in the world. All right, so let's go to Key West. Everybody loves Key West. How many people have been to Key West, right? A lot? Okay, if you haven't, you're missing out. Key West is this amazing town. It's down at the bottom of the Keys, so you got a long way to go. They love proclaiming that we seceded where others failed, because they once seceded from the United States for 5 minutes, declared war on the United States, surrendered immediately, and declared that we needed $8 billion in foreign aid. That's my kind of town, right? You gotta love it. The Conch Republic, long live the Conch Republic. A few years later, after that happened, the mayor, the Navy was doing like a fake, training operation, so they pretended Key West was a foreign country, and they sent boats there to negotiate for supplies to test their sailors. And Key West found out about it, the mayor found out about it, and so they immediately put the flotilla into order. They brought back the Conch Republic militia, so they had the fireboats shooting the navies with fire hoses, and the Navy had to surrender to Key West. So, that's the level of this town. The town where the mayor was once a fireman who ran the fire department and was selling drugs out of the fire department, and he quit and became mayor. And then when the DEA came and investigated and shut down the fire department for selling drugs, he was like, I am shocked that they are selling drugs to the fire department. Captain Tony's Saloon, there you go. So definitely worth a visit, right? Florida, everything's Florida man's new. No, it's been there forever. But anyway, Key West as probably the most infamous resident of all of Florida, and he is so worth your trip. We, of course, are talking about Florida's most haunted object, Robert the doll. So some people know Robert, some people don't. For those of you who don't know Robert, we'll give you a little history. Robert is a little doll in Key West. He is about yay big. He was made by the Steiff company that made teddy bears in Germany. And Key West was once the richest town per capita in America. And so rich families all lived there. And so he was like the Teddy Ruxpin. You know, he was the super valuable toy of the day. And the father brings it home and he gives it to his son, Robert. And Robert Otto is so pleased to have this toy. It's amazing. It's great. Just like a little harlequin. And he's so happy with it. But he immediately starts changing it into his clothes. And he immediately, bad things start happening around the house. Things are breaking. The servants are very upset because Robert is not acting right, and this doll is freaking them out. And he'll talk to the doll, and the doll will talk back in a different voice. And so the servants are done. They're like, no, we're out. Now, Key West is a small town, so if you can't keep your servants, guess what? You ain't getting any more. So that's not going to be any good for us. So we've got to do something about this doll. So they go, Robert, you got to stop acting weird. And he's like, oh, no, I'm not Robert anymore. What? He's like, I'm going to go by my middle name, Gene, because the doll wants to go by Robert, and we don't want any more confusion. Nowadays, we'd have given that kid some Ritalin, and we wouldn't have any stories. But thankfully, we didn't. And so we have Robert the doll. And Gene Otto, and they grow up in the house together. They are inseparable. They love each other very much. Gene finally grows up and heads off to art school. He's going to become an artist. And the family is stuck with this creepy doll, and they lock it in the attic, the turret room of the Otto house. And people keep seeing the doll looking out the windows of the turret. They go into the family, what the hell is that creepy thing? And the family's like, oh, we'll go up there. And they'll find the doll in different places. They've locked the attic. No one goes up there. How is the doll moving around? And finally, Robert, or Gene, over in France, has met the love of his life. And he's going to move home. And he's going to open up an art gallery. And he's going to be the talk of the town. And he gets down here, and he's so happy to move back into his old house because there's his doll. And they become inseparable again. Much to his wife's chagrin. So whenever they go to a restaurant, Gene and Robert walk in, and his wife's allowed to come in 5 minutes later after they've made their grand entrance. Special settings were placed at restaurants for Robert the doll. They were the talk of the town. Everybody was very happy except for Mrs. Sadly, Gene passed away. And so the wife was with the doll, and guess what? Bye, don't need the doll no more, get rid of it. And then she moves away. No one knows what happens to the doll for a few years. They sell the house, she sells the house. Guess what? Suddenly, this new person buys the house, the doll is in the attic. They've got the prize toy. They're so happy, they got the talking point of Key West, right? They're so thrilled. She's not happy with that after about 2 weeks. This is creepy. This is bad. So she locks him in the attic in the turret room for many, many years. And again, she eventually doesn't know what to do with it. She takes it to the Fort East Martello Museum and says, I'm done with this. This is Robert the doll. And they're like, what the hell's this? They're like, it's just trust me, I can't handle it, you need it. So the museum takes it in, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't keep them on display. They kind of, what is this creepy thing? Put it in the back. They found out real quickly, Robert doesn't like to be treated badly. Robert starts messing with them, starts doing terrible things. Whenever they have a worker in there, Robert scares the hell out of them by appearing behind them suddenly and all this stuff. So they realize Robert wants to be seen. So they put him on display. And within a couple years, they realized Robert has rules. He's like dealing with a tiger in a zoo. We have to put up a list of rules. So over the years, they figured out the 5 rules of Robert the Doll. So when you go visit Robert, which you can, there are 5 rules. The first rule is introduce yourself. You have to let him know who you are, right? Because he needs to build that connection. Be polite to Robert. Always say nice things. Never be rude. Never be mean. Okay? Number 3, do not take his photo without permission, or bad things happen. Right? Number 4, when you're done, say goodbye to Robert. Thank him for his time. Be very kind. You gotta be nice to Robert. The 5th rule is if you screwed any of the other steps up, you have to write him a letter. And you have to apologize profusely. You have to profane yourself. I am so sorry, Robert. I screwed up. Now, so, to go visit Robert, you'll drive down to Fort Myers and take the ferry, and you can be there in 4 hours. It's awesome. So Robert, we saved the best for last in Eerie Travels because Robert is king. This wall of letters behind him, those are all the people who didn't believe and didn't follow the rules. He gets about 100 letters a month from people who have took pictures without permission, said some bad things, and you can spend a day just reading letters. 3 former presidents have written Robert the Doll. I'll let you guess which 3. So, all right. And you'll see our caption in that picture is printed with special permission of Robert the Doll. We don't poke the bear. So one movie writer was so inspired by this story, he came up with a character called Chucky and Child's Play. So that's how important Robert is. Now, Robert, like I said, you can go visit him at the Key West Fort East Morello Museum, and he is pretty amazing. Everybody talks to Annabelle. I'm like, Robert and Annabelle, if they ever got together, ooh. Yeah, that would be the bride of Chucky every day. Oh my gosh. I just manifested that. Great. Okay,
God damn it.
anyway, hey, it is what it is. But the beautiful thing about Robert is we love him to death, but reading those letters are hysterical. My favorite was, Dear Sir Robert, I addressed him right? Yeah, Dear Sir Robert, I am sorry I made fun of your leather face and called you stupid. Leather is actually very nice for a face, and you are quite handsome, and I am sure you are brilliant. Please remove your curse. We get the message. Please fix my eye, my Xbox, and my marriage. And I love that he put it in that order, right? I have the eye to play the Xbox, and if the marriage is at the bottom of the list, I definitely need the Xbox. So, yeah, you can just have fun with those. A lot of people just write and say hi. He is on Twitter, Robert the Doll Official, so you can find him, and you can send him Twitters. I don't know if that works as well, but send him a letter, and they're awesome. So that's Robert, and he is probably the king of spooky Florida. So I will talk about one last place. And now we love our skunk apes, we love our monsters, we love our UFOs, we have the cult breed UFOs, we have all these things, and our book goes through all of them. So, but I will talk about, because everybody wants to know what's the scariest place in Florida, right? Is that what we all want to know? The scariest place I've been in Florida, besides I-4. There is a thing called the I-4 Dead Zone for a reason. It's not Casadega. How many people know about Casadega? Yeah, Casadega is a town founded by psychics out near Orlando. It's where the Twilight Zone meets Mayberry. And that's actually on their t-shirts. It's awesome. It's great. More psychics per capita than anywhere else in the world. It's awesome. Everybody thinks Sonoya, all that. Nope, Casadega, Florida. They have the Devil's Chair there, but not the Devil's Tree. But it's been debunked. It's just a morning chair, but it is still a cool place to visit. But the scariest place in Florida is up near Marianna, Florida, which is kind of Panhandle area. You can go by Ocheesy Pond, where the Ocheesy Pond Wild Man event happened. In the 1800s, they captured a Bigfoot. They didn't know what to do with it, so they sent it to the governor. Governor didn't know what to do with it. He sent it to the insane asylum, state insane asylum. We know it died there. We don't know what happened to it. It was buried into an unmarked grave, and so when we would love to find out where that is, the problem is the unmarked graves are now under where the main building for the state hospital is, so we'll never be able to dig it up. But anyway, that is, that's just all right there. So that gives you a little sense of that area, like Key West. Mariana's an odd place. There are caves there, so if you want Florida caves, you can go there. A haunted bridge there called the Bellamy Bridge. But Mariana has one word that terrifies everyone, and that is the word dozier, which was known as the Mariana School for Boys, or the Florida School for Boys, or the Dozier School for Boys. Arthur G. Dozier was the headmaster of it for some time, so now called the Dozier School for Boys. One of the most haunted locations in the world. And the reason being is basically it was 110 years of state-sponsored child abuse. What happened is the school opened and it was for the worst offenders. It was going to be for juvenile offenders. There were only going to be 500, and they were going to have the worst of the worst. Kids who killed other kids, kids who raped other kids, kids who did terrible things to other kids. They were going to be sent to Dozier for rehabilitation. Within 10 years, they had over 1,000 inmates, students. They were pretending it was a school still. And they're locking these kids in with each other, and terrible things are happening. And they can't figure out why are terrible things happening. You're just locking them into a school with each other. But then what happens is, and this is still with the facilities for 500. They hadn't expanded at all. And they're just head to head. These there's not cells or anything, and it gets worse, and it grows, and eventually it has over 5,000 there within just 10 years. The facilities have not grown that much. They're using the kids as basically child labor to feed and cook and run the garden, it's feeding everybody and all this. It's crazy, and kids are being sent there for all kinds of things. And so before it was murder, and all that. There were kids there sent for incorrigibleness, truancy, excessive smoking, and this is all the way through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. 2011, it is finally closed for budget reasons. Florida. But the thing is, no one really knows what happened there because the records there are so spotty. There were no records at all. It was just little documents. We go to all these crazy places. I'll go to a church in medieval England, to find a grave of some strange author that wrote something in the 1400s. And they'll be like, oh, that's row 6, column 4, that's his skull. Okay, there's a million skulls, and they know exactly what it is. There you go, hey, we're looking for the grave of, Billy Costle. There's no record. There's a record, presumed escaped. He's just not there anymore. No one knows what happened. And that's the records of this. There was a boot hill with 21 grave markers. When it finally closed, Professor Kimberly from USF, myself and a few others, we got to go investigate this place. And she wants to find out, well, there's 21 markers, only 17 recorded deaths. Who were the 4 unknowns? 100 years, only 17 deaths, that's pretty good. So we do ground penetrating radar. We found 55 bodies, 17 recorded deaths. And that's just at the boot hill we know about. The students, the survivors, the kids who survived this place, all say there was a second boot hill that we don't know where that is. Up until 2 years ago, you were not allowed to do anything at the Dozier School remains. But they are tearing it down because the state can't get rid of it fast enough. They're not allowing any further studies or digs. They're literally bulldozing it. The only building they're saving is what's called the White House. And the White House was their solitary confinement that they finally built in the 1970s. And it was a white stone block building. And this was where it was supposedly solitary confinement. And they put these giant industrial fans on this one little building. Why would you do that? And we found out it was to keep the noise down, because that's where they would torture the kids and they would beat them. And of course, all the stuff that was going on student to student had spread to the staff. And there's an organization called the White House Boys that are for survivors, and it's become like a therapy group. They tell their stories of what they went through. What would happen is in the White House, you would be in that room, and one of the guards had a thing he liked to call Black Beauty, which was a 10-foot whip. And it was a 9x9 room. So you would hear this tap, tap, crack as the whip would hit the wall, the ceiling, and then come down on your back. And you would only know how many times you've been beat if the kid in the cell next to you kept count for you. You would find out the next morning. It's terrifying. So of course there's ghosts there. Of course there's stories of all these ghosts. We went up there for the ghost stories. But when you do that, and you're writing about that, aren't we kind of disservicing all the real crap that went on there? So that's why we don't, our book, we talk about, yes, there's ghost stories, but you've got to know the real stuff. And that is the darkest place I've ever been. And now the walls are down. They are rebuilding 2 of the main centers into adult rehabilitation centers for those with autism. They're going to try to help them get into society and teach them how to do job hunting and stuff like that. Fantastic. The sheriff's office, guess what? They bulldozed a section and put up a suddenly brand new sheriff's area where supposedly Boot Hill number 2 was, and we're not allowed to investigate that area. So we were not allowed to do ground penetrating radar, all that. So state of Florida is just washing it away. But thankfully the White House Boys building, the White House has been preserved and has a marker, that is for who watches the watchmen. And that's, basically, we keep an eye on our own and we let the children down. So on that fun note, I'm gonna give you a fun one to end on, okay? Because we've done all this. That was terrible, right? I'm sorry. I brought it all down Sunday, all right? I'm gonna tell you my favorite monster in Florida, okay? This guy lives up North Florida, okay? He lives in the town of Barden. None of you know where Barden is. I can guarantee it, because it's a town of about 8 people. It is literally a one-light town, okay? Just kind of diagonally down from Jacksonville, in the middle of that dark spot. We look at Florida from the space, right? You look at Florida at night, and you see all the beautiful lights of the cities on the beaches, and then you see the big bright lights of Tampa and Jacksonville, all the cities that support the beach properties, and then you see it's a little darker, and as it's getting into more, and then it gets real dark, and that's the Everglades, and that's the Ocala National Forest, where more Bigfoot are sighted than the Pacific Northwest. And then you see the Green Swamp, which is where all our water comes from. And that gets a little smaller every day, it's a little scary. But then this little area up near Jacksonville, and that area has a skunk ape that is a little different from our other Florida Bigfoots. Because again, Florida can't name things, we have to call him a skunk ape, right? He smells bad, he's hairy, he's a skunk ape. All right, so this guy, he lives up there. Tell me this is not the best skunk ape ever. All right, he's first sighted in 1884. Young lady riding home. She's a champion rider, and she's spooked by this 10-foot tall creature that comes out of the woods holding a lantern, and it's covered in hair, and it's panting, and it's staring at her, and she's horse height. And it scares her horse, so they take off. She's barely able to keep control of the horse. And she says, she startled it. So as it runs back into the woods, it disappears, kind of like cloaks into the forest. And she still sees the lantern light for a few minutes, and then it just disappears and fades away. So, is it a ghost of a Bigfoot? What the heck is this? So the Barden monster, is seen there. Now he's seen many times. 1930s, most famously, a car almost hits him. This guy is always in the road. And again, the lantern is seen fading off as he runs off. 1948, my favorite sighting of him, he's sitting by a lake. The lantern is sitting beside him, and he's got a fishing pole in the water. And he's napping. I love this. I'm like, I know. And they went back to get the sheriff. What is this? And it's gone. You know, the fishing pole remained, though. Poor guy. But you know, so after that story gets out, Jacksonville newspaper loves this guy. So one of the editors there decides to start writing editorials about things were better in the old days, and he writes it as the Barton Monster, but he doesn't call him the Barton Monster. He calls him the Barton Booger. And he signs all his editorials, "Love the Barton Booger." You know, and it's how life was better in the 20s and life was better in the early days and all this stuff. So he becomes kind of famous. 1960s, and he's turning up a few places. He's starting to show up again. People are seeing him again. People talk about the Barton Monster, and he's the Barton Booger, and he's kind of actually a little scary now. He's getting a little grumpy in his old age. The lantern is more of a ghostly light that follows him around, and he's got a little mean. And then again, Nessie Mania hits, and In Search of hits, and he is cited a lot of times. Now, there's a grocery store there. I call it a grocery store. It's a gas station, but it's the only thing in Barton, and it's called Bud's. And the guy who ran it was named Bud, and he becomes ground zero for Barton Booger investigations. He becomes the keeper of the X-file on the Barton Booger. He's got newspaper clippings, he's got pictures, he's got documents, he's got everything you want to know about the Barton Booger. And the sightings are exploding. And then the sheriff calls Bud and says, "Bud, I don't know who you got in the costume, but you gotta stop, because they're gonna get killed." And so Bud sadly admitted to us years later that yes, he had a friend in a gorilla costume, and so that's a hoax that we kind of debunked. But does that explain those early sightings? Does it explain the later sightings? Because he's seen more recent. He's even seen on. Now, the best part about this is there was a family that loved him so much that they would perform birthday parties as the Barton Booger, and they played their hit song, which actually was a hit in Florida, the Barton Booger Boogie. I would love if you all Google that and find it and play it on your playlist of choice. I think it's on YouTube. Somebody's got it. But the album is super hard to find and very collectible. But the more recent sightings have been the ghostly light, and then he appears. Now, we do a lot of talks at Bigfoot conferences and UFO conferences and stuff, and a lot of people don't talk about modern sightings of Bigfoot. Sometimes have some ghostly lights, some spectral orbs. When I first started doing this, the ghost people didn't talk to the Bigfoot people. Bigfoot people didn't talk to the UFO people. UFO people did not talk to the clairvoyants, and just like, it's on, and it would not mesh. But now, thanks to modern social media and the fact that Travel Channel and History Channel have no travel or history, they just have ghost adventures and ghost hunters and dead files, and I'm fighting the hand that feeds me, ancient aliens on. But guess what? We know that that's what it is. So suddenly everybody starts talking again, and we start realizing there's this green flash often associated with Bigfoot sightings. There's this weird green glow that's sometimes seen before a skunk ape shows up. So it's Barton Booger, as goofy as he is and as crazy as that story is, we're starting to realize he might have been ahead of the curve and was meshing all this, and we just didn't realize it. So that's my stuff, gang. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah. I am happy to take questions if anybody's got a question in the back.
Robert the doll.
Yeah.
Does he curse you if you call him a nickname like Robbie or Bob or?
I haven't heard that, but you just gotta be respectful. As long as and remember to say goodbye. Because otherwise you haven't broken the curse. We kind of figured it's more like a fairy type thing, where if you give them your name, that's what we figured out what happened with Gene. He gave him his name. You don't think about that, right? It's like you never give a fairy your name. He gave this doll his name, gave him his life.
Does Robert have all 5 fingers, or?
He's got 4. But, question?
How do you know if you have Robert's permission? How do you know?
Okay, then you just ask. And believe me, you'll find out. No, it's one of those, we had, people will, we have a little mini Robert that we take with us. Robert, the company that made it, Steve Toys, made the original Robert. They still make replica Roberts. For those of you who watched the Ozzy Osbourne thing, he had one of those. They only make 1,000 a year. They sell them at the Fort East Morello Museum. They are very collectible, very hard to get. It's only 1,000 a year. We have one the museum gave us, and we are very respectful because hey, it's got the lineage, it's got the history, and if it's Robert's image, is it the power of Robert? So for those Doctor Who fans, is the image of an angel? Right? So, but anyway, so we had a lady who was terribly drunk at an event. I believe it was one of the super cons down in Miami. And she's like, I'm going to selfie with you, Robert. And I'm like, well, make sure you ask permission. She's like, eh. And she starts taking her picture. And as she's doing it, I watched the crack on her phone screen go, and literally just across the screen. And it was so funny. My editor was with me at the time, and she's like, that doll does not get to stay in our room ever again. And I'm like, Elizabeth, you're being rude to Robert. She's like, Robert, you can have my bed. So we know, don't poke the bear. So no, but basically it's just, if you find out, if you screwed up, bad things happen. So, another question.
So has there ever been a hoax, like for example, the skunk gorilla? Has there ever they've been in a costume and has they ever died? Like a hoax that happened?
A hoax that died? No, there's an amazing hoax story out of Clearwater. So for those Clearwater people, there was a giant penguin in the 1960s spotted on Clearwater Beach. Okay, no. What happened was a guy decided he wanted to make a sea monster legend, so he got giant footprints and he walked around St. Beach and Clearwater Beach to show that there was a sea serpent. The Smithsonian came down because these prints were so amazing. And the Smithsonian scientists studied these prints and said the only thing that could make these prints is a 10-foot tall penguin. The guy who made the footprints was so mad because it was a sea monster he was trying to make Nessie, and it was this. So he went, sadly, right before he died. It took 40 years before he admitted that he'd done it, because he was going to do it again. But no, he didn't die in the Bigfoot suit. Now, I have heard some people getting hurt. One of my favorite people in the world, his name's Connor Flynn of Bigfoot Anonymous. He's up in the Panhandle, and he is a bundle of energy. He has dressed as a skunk ape for movies and stuff like that. He's also, there's a couple movies you can buy at Amazon and Walmart and stuff that have him in it. I think one's called Gatorzilla or something like that. That's the quality here. But he did a skunk ape and tripped and fell and hurt himself pretty bad. So that's probably the closest I got to that. So, any other questions? Over there.
Can you book the Robert curse on someone? Like you meet the Robert doll, you say hi, and he's like, oh, this person's bad mouthing you.
Oh, see, that's a good question. But would Robert know that you're lying? So that's the question.
That's not one of the rules.
Well, you gotta be nice. You gotta be polite. Politeness is no, don't lie, right? Friends don't lie. Thank you, Stranger Things. So, but yeah, question.
Something I heard one time was that like nearby, like there was like a military site, like a grave site nearby. Is this area like haunted?
This area?
Because of like Fort Brooke and stuff.
Fort Brooks, you've got, like I said, so much mob history right here because the police were not allowed to investigate any crime in Tampa unless Charlie Wall, who was the gangster, the lead gangster, led them. Matamoros Bordello, the mayor and the chief of police held the beauty pageants to see who could work there if you were pretty enough to work there. So there is so much history here, and of course the Seminole Wars were here. There was two burial mounds where they built this convention center. We all know from Poltergeist what that means. There are lost cemeteries all over Tampa Bay. The settlers would come in, they build these beautiful homes, and they build a family cemetery. Then these terrible things called hurricanes and tropical storms would come in, or just our afternoon 4 o'clock storm, and then they would run away and let the buildings go to rot. And then people would come in and go, oh wow, look at this beautiful land. Let's put a new house here. Let's put this, not realizing they're building on cemeteries. And we're only now finding some of them. Every time they build a new school, they find a slave cemetery or something else that we've forgotten to document. So yeah, this area is full of ghosts and monsters. And the Bradley Massacre occurred here. Nobody even knows what that is. It's it was a Seminole massacre, Second Seminole War. Yep, and it was one of the first causes of it. So yeah, it's all over, man. That's, I've got 4 books on it, so we got more coming. Yes.
What do you know about the Indian Mound at Safety Harbor?
Safety Harbor, Indian Mound. All right. So the best part about that is that is what protects Tampa Bay from the storms.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Not Minnie Lightning, the Voodoo Queen. The Seminole Mound there, it's probably predates the Seminole. They call it a Seminole Mound, but it's actually way before the Seminoles. Probably Tocabega, which was common in this area. The mound, there's a shaman spirit that walks up the mound every night at sunset, and he summons the great earth spirit. And the great earth spirit fights the storm gods and protects Tampa Bay. That's why there's so much lightning, is it's the earth spirit fighting the storm gods. And so he steers the storms away. So if you go over to Felipe Park, bye gang, thank you so much. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. You go to Felipe Park, you can go to that mound and go up there at sunset, because they don't close till after dark, and you can go look for that. And it's an amazing place, and it's just across the water. And I'm gonna have to take one more, and then we'll have to call it. So you've been so patient, so yeah. Oh, all right, we'll go with you first.
Oh, no, it's about-
I'll do 2. It's all
It's
good.
about the Dozier.
Dozier.
Okay, the police office that is basically built on the land of Dozier.
Yeah.
Would you ever think about interviewing any of the police if they want to talk?
I've talked to the police, and they were nice enough to let us into the buildings that are still, they haven't bulldozed all the buildings yet, so the police were very kind and let us into the buildings that haven't been bulldozed. Get permission before you go anywhere, guys, that's always your key. It's trespassing if you go anywhere else. But they have said, off the record, they're allowed to talk about it, but they will not say anything else,
They
so.
don't say there's any like specter or spooks inside.
They off the record, they have told me, we don't like being here at night. But they will not say anything. The most thing is the church across the street that the kids used to go to, the police say they get called there a lot because people hear singing and church music, and that's been abandoned since 1977. So that is an actual common occurrence right there. That police station is right across the street from it. So, yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get a chance to investigate, but we tried. Okay, last one.
Have you ever researched the Crescent State Park?
Crescent, yes, center of Hollow Earth, yes. So Estero, which is a fun day trip, go down to Estero. Thank you for bringing them up. That's in our second book, Freaky Florida, which I'm sold out of. But Estero is the Crescent's historical site. It's now Crescent State Park. They're dropping history because history is boring. And it was built by a cult that basically went to this place. Their guy, Cyrus Teed, was their guy. His real name wasn't Cyrus, but he took that because that means shepherd. And he was struck by lightning and decided that God told him, you need to build the New Jerusalem. And we are actually inside Hollow Earth. And the sky and all the stars and all that is just a big gas cloud. And we're the center, and you need to make a New Jerusalem. So he goes there, he finds people, he gets some scientists, he gets a lot of people there, and he invents a machine to prove that the earth is convex instead of concave. And of course, it's all bogus. Most famously, though, he gets down there and they build a society, and it's pretty cool. He allows women to vote. He allows women to hold equal rank, but they still have to be married to 3 guys. And all that. But so maybe not as progressive as people like to say. But the cool thing was they get down there and they don't know what to do with this place, and they're excited, and then he passes away, and that's it. Suddenly they've lost their leader. What do we do? Well, he's gonna come back. He's the Messiah. So they leave him in the bathtub where he died for days. And days, and days, and the fungus starts growing on him, and they're like, look, life is coming back from him. What? Oh my God, so gross.
I love doomsday.
Finally, the state comes and says, you have to bury this guy. So they put him in a mausoleum, but he's so rotted, they have to keep him in the bathtub. So they build a mausoleum for the bathtub and put him in it. Our shepherd, it says, 2 years later, hurricane comes through and wipes out the mausoleum and takes him out to sea. And they go, you see, he's been reborn in the sea. It was God claiming him. And
I love doomsday cults.
yes, yeah, I love doomsday cults. But they weren't a doomsday cult. They were just like, finally the last Koreshian donated the land to the state when we landed on the moon. And she said, maybe we're not Hollow Earth. So, maybe we were wrong. But what was cool is one of the things they built there was a store on the highway, and it was basically the first 7-Eleven. Because they realized there was a market for their stuff, and it became like the only thing between Naples and Fort Myers that was a stop that you could stop in and all that. So pretty crazy stuff, and that's what Florida's full of, and that's what my books are full of. You can find me at eerieflorida.com. My wonderful wife illustrates all this stuff, and I draw them. We're also on Area 52 television as Eerie Travels, which is our new show where we drive around and film this stuff, and I tell you these crazy stories. And hopefully we will see you all soon. So thank you for coming. And you all get home safe. Drive across the haunted bridges and have fun. So, yeah. Wisconsin, like the Beast of Way Road and all that kind of stuff. The Hodag, you gotta love the Hodag. We did Erie Appalachia, so our next is going further northeast is our plan. So. Oh, we love the Hodag. He's great. And the Hodag store is, they have a Hodag festival, and it is awesome. So that's awesome. St. Augustine, Pensacola. St. Augustine Lighthouse is famous. Yes, there's a lot of good ghosts there. So. Thanks, gang. Hi. Yes. So how you been? We will be at Spooky in the fall. Yes. We'll have the books there. Yes. And we plan on it. I got a couple here. So yeah, we'll be there at Spooky. Yeah, that's confirmed. We locked that one in. So yeah, we'll see you there. So, hi, gang. Sure. Make sure you apologize. Or you might wind up writing him a letter a little bit later. So, yeah, do it right there. Just say, while you're there, because you're still, while the connection's open, just say, yeah, hey, Mr. Robert, sorry. I didn't mean that. It slipped. I didn't mean, that's, a lot of people do that. It's you're fine. That's good. It's just be nice, be polite. That's the key. And trust me, he's actually a lovable little character. Right, Robert? Okay. So but there's a documentary coming out on Netflix very soon, and I'm not allowed to talk about it too much, but we're all quiet here, right? Stop the recording. I'll tell you one quick thing. It's coming out on Netflix. Should be next month, maybe the month after. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I'm a talking head on it. But we got to bring Robert home to the artist's house for the first time in 30 years, and that's on that documentary. So just look for Robert the Dog Key West. It'll pop up on it. But if you follow my site, as soon as I'm allowed to talk about it, it'll be everywhere.
One of the many things you will never shut up about.
Yes. Oh yeah, they're $20 a piece. And my wife's already pre-signed them with her illustrations. So. Oh yeah, flip through. Yeah. Flip through. There's Creepy, which is all paranormal. And like I said, I'm out of Freaky. I sold out yesterday, so. Question?
I got a fun ghost story for you.
Oh, love ghost stories, yes.
I was on a fire crew out in Nevada.
Oh.
And we were on a fire out in the middle of nowhere. And the only hotel, we went into town, Tampa Bay, right? It was 2 pools. End of the season, November, fire, burning cold, was awful. We tried to be out with it. So we went into town, and the only room that any rooms was this place called the Mid-Spot.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know it was haunted.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
So it was me.
I'll need my phone.
Okay,
My aunt and
Mike was still going, so
and,
all right.
Mr. Hanford.
Okay.
And we were